There are different kinds of house guests. My friend Ann divides them into two categories: those you do and do not change the sheets for. Lots of children, grandchildren, in and out. That's one category of house guests. Then there's the group that comes that you want to make a great impression. Your daughter's new in-laws, your work colleague from out of town. And that's the crowd you not only change the sheets for, but you make sure the pillow shams are just right. And you turn on the lamps and you set out finger foods on the coffee table and maybe even some soft music on Pandora. And then there's this other category who are not family, not really, but they might as well be. The childhood friends, the college buddies, the girls. The folks you would never set out a cheese ball for. You just tell them, if you're hungry, fix something. These are the friends that you wake up in the morning, your hair's all messed up, you don't care, you're not going to comb it before you see them. You'll wear your fuzzy slippers down to get coffee. They've got bunny ears, you don't care because they're going to laugh at you anyway. You hope they do. Somebody's going to say, hey, there's Jimmy wearing bunny ear slippers again. That group of friends. And then at night, way past late, these are the friends you sit with on the sofa and pull your knees up. And the conversation turns to things that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. Then the conversation turns to things you hoped for 10, 15, 20 years from now. You share what you accomplished, what you hoped to accomplish, ambitions unfulfilled and regrets. The things I wanted, the things I still want, it doesn't go away. It's like an unsatisfied craving. There is something out there that I have still not acquired that will make all of this feel better. We wish our experience was like the artist's experience. Some years ago, the great abstract painter Wilhelm de Kooning was featured on a PBS special. They did 3 days of painting time-lapsed into 1-hour documentary. So the painting moved along quickly. And in that 1 hour, he's splashing on cobalt blue paint, and then there's a speck of crimson here, and then he steps back and he dabs the canvas and one more brush stroke. The whole time he's focused and intense and his eyes are darting. He's checking the painting again. He holds the brush close. He pulls back. Finally, he pulls back a final time, steps away and says, "No, it's done." And he never looked back again. But few of us have that temperament. Most of us spend a lot of our time looking back, regrets and what ifs, and a little more and I'd be just fine. We have air-conditioned homes and more than enough stuff and hobbies, but still, they're just these gnawing ambitions that are unfulfilled, and it doesn't go away. It's like an unsatisfied craving. There must be something out there that I have still not acquired that will make all of this feel better. My reading habits are kind of random. Some people might image that the pastor just sits in the study with commentaries or maybe branches out with some Eudora Welty. But this week I was piddling around in Jimmy Buffett's memoir, A Pirate Looks at 50. The first chapter is titled, My Life in 400 Words or Less. I'm going to read about 100 words of his 400 words, but listen for the theme. Listen for the craving that shows up. I sang and worked on a fishing boat. I went totally crazy, did a lot of dope, met the right girl, made another record, had a hit, bought a boat, sailed away to the Caribbean. I started another band, worked the road, had my second and last hit, bought a house in Aspen, started spending summers in New England, got married, broke my leg 3 times in 1 year, had a baby girl, made more records, bought a bigger boat, and sailed away to St. Bart's. I got separated from the right girl, sold the boat, sold the house in Aspen, moved back to Key West, worked the road, and made more records. Did you hear it? Another band, another house, a bigger boat. It doesn't go away. It's this unsatisfied craving. There's something out there I still have not acquired that will make all of this feeling go away. And that is our reality. And while it is our reality, it's hard for me to think about this being the reality of the first century world, right? I mean, in my imagining, I think about the folks in the first century. When we're looking at today's text, I think about them walking around in togas and sandals and sharing ideas about the current philosophy or today's catch of fish. It's just hard to think that these first century Christians were really as greedy and lustful and ambitious as we are. But what continues to be true is how much we are all alike. Our differences and struggles are differences of degree and not differences of kind. Their struggles are ours, and our struggles are each other's. I am convinced that what makes you different from me is not a difference of degree, or rather it is a difference of degree and not a difference in kind. And what makes the Bible continue to come alive is that it continues to show its light on the human condition across all the generations and shows how much we do share in common. First century hopes and failures are the same as ours. The first century woman wanted a more appreciative husband. She wanted a house closer to town, and she didn't want to have to walk as far to the well as she wanted to live closer to the well like some of the other folks in town did. And the first century man wanted Jesse's girl. He wanted somebody more dazzling than the one he was betrothed to, and he wanted a bigger boat. His friend just got a bigger boat, and wouldn't it be cool to have one? When I was in Turkey this summer, I mentioned to you, some of you came on a Wednesday night and heard me do the presentation about my trip to Ephesus, the ancient city. It starts from the sea and goes uphill. We started our trip in Ephesus from the top of the hill, winding down the cobblestone main street, passing businesses and making our way down to the bottom where the library was, and then later the sea. There was along the street, about halfway down, a private residence, a fabulous home that opened out right onto Main Street. The ruins still had a yellow inlaid tile mosaic that was the entranceway to this fabulous home. And it emptied right into Main Street. I imagine the guy who lived there. I imagine him, tall, Middle Eastern, wavy hair, walking out of this fabulous home right onto Main Street, this tiled palace. He had the best house in town. In my imagining, he was also probably married to Angie Harmon. I mean, he had it all. And I hated him. His sins and my sins are just the same. Just a lot of years between them. And this gnawing, craving, competitive, can't get enough selfishness was killing the early church. And again, the writer of James is addressing the common everyday sins that might look harmless enough, but they're the true thieves of human happiness and congregational unity. Unredeemed anger, partiality, we talked about those already. But today the author is challenging the church to take serious assessment of the damage that can happen in pursuit of our unsatisfied craving. And here's what he said. those conflicts and disputes among you, where do they come from? Do they not come from your cravings that are at war within you? You want something and do not have it, so you commit murder. You covet something and cannot obtain it, so you engage in disputes and conflicts. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, in order to spend what you get on your pleasures. Your cravings are at war with you. Well, the answer the biblical writer gave this first century community, the answer to the anguish, the way to satisfy the cravings was this: submit yourselves to God. Simply, the author says, submit yourselves to God. Now, you think, well, thanks, right? I mean, doesn't that sound like a bumper sticker answer? But it's not. This is the deep and profound truth of the gospel of Christ, that the only way to end the war of the cravings is deeper submission to the love and acceptance of God. My dear mentor, John Claypool, said that he grew up with a profound sense of what he called nobodiness. He said his parents meant well. They were trying to encourage and inspire, but the thing he heard over and over as a child was, if you're ever going to make anything of yourself, if you're ever going to amount to anything, you're going to have to make something of yourself. And so he fell into this game of succeeding and competition, trying over and over to satisfy the cravings. He became teacher's pet, then there was another war to win. He made the school patrol, and there was another war to win. Next was athletics. Eventually, people became objects. And before long, everybody was considered someone who either hampered or helped his success. There was this craving. There is something out there that I have not yet acquired that will make all of this feel better. And he said he lived that way until he was 35 years old. And the thing that changed for him at 35 was this. He fell in with a peer group, a group of other ministers who over time risked being vulnerable with each other. And one day, he said he was one of the last to open up, but one day he let the mask down and told this group how desperate he had been living, how much energy he gave to striving for worth, how wrung out he felt, always competing, always proving, how unworthy he felt all the time, and he felt like he had to do something else to earn. And he said that the word of grace came from the man in the group with whom he felt the least affinity. The man said to him when he had finished pouring out his soul, he said, what we need, not what you need, me up, you down, me good, you bad. What we need is to feel the truth of the gospel down in our guts. When Jesus said on the Sermon on the Mount, you are the light of the world, he just declared, you are. You are the light of the world. This is just birthright. There is nothing to achieve. By your birthright, you are a person of great worth, and our worth is not something to be acquired, something out there. It is something in here to be claimed. Claypool said he saw clearly for the first time in his life. He said he began to understand why the most recorded miracle in all of Scripture is giving sight to the blind. He said it might be the great miracle of the Scripture that Jesus continues to give sight to the blind, because finally he saw life differently and more clearly. He said it was what Thomas Merton would have called the breakthrough to the already. And from that life-changing moment, he said his agenda shifted. It moved from attainment to awareness. And he realized that for him to live fully, he was going to have to conquer the war of the cravings. He could not attain enough to feel worth and significance because it is a silly and elusive game. Worth does not come from attaining what you do not have, but it comes from the happy awareness of what you already possess. So when the author of James says, submit yourselves to God, he's not giving a trite Sunday school answer. He knew that those first century Christians were living into the same lie we're living into. There is something out there I still have not acquired that will make all of this feel better, and it's a lie. He's telling the early church that the only way to win the war of the craving is to submit yourselves to God's already love for you, to open your eyes to the truth that you are already God's beloved. You are a person of worth by birthright, by the fact that you have been made in the image of the Holy One, and there is nothing you can attain that will make it go away or make it better. This is the word of the Lord. Would you stand and sing and respond to the grace of God that beckons you forward into the next step of discipleship, into that love?